guys, this is Dr. Bimos with Public Health Talks. On today's show, I will be talking about sexual violence, specifically its impact on mental health, physical health, and the whole community as a whole. And I wanted to bring attention to this topic due to recent events that occurred, lately. Example, racial injustice, and also series of rape cases that occurred in Nigeria that led to, protests around the country. So on today's show, I have Ms. Hope here with me to help in facilitating the discussion. So I want to welcome you to the show. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me. It's really an honor to be on your platform. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That means a lot, yeah. So a brief bio of Ms. Hope. She's a public health professional with extensive experience in behavioral health promotion and health education, research, and she's an advocate actually, and she has experience in community development as well, social and community mobilization. So again, welcome to this show. I'm so excited, you're able to join me today.
Yes, very excited.
Thank you so much, yeah. So the WHO indicated that sexual violence is a serious public health and human rights problem with both short and long-term consequences on women's physical, mental, and sexual and reproductive health. Lately, my heart is full of sadness because of stories of young people in different parts of the world subjected to sexual violence, rape, and in the end, some being killed. These stories are heartbreaking, and it calls for the development and the implementation of community-based education programs that will educate and provide tools needed for survivors and to prevent sexual violence. So on that note, would you tell me what you will define as sexual violence?
Well, I'll define sexual violence as any sexual act, or an attempt to obtain a sexual act. It could be sexual comments or advances, or an act to traffic a person, or comments, directed against the person's sexuality using coercion.
Inappropriate comments.
Yes, using coercion. And this could be, regardless of the person's relationship to the victim, in any setting, including the home and work, but not limited to the home and work, but it includes the home and work, because most times when we talk of sexual violence, people kind of, take the home aspect out of it. They feel, it can't happen within the home.
Yes.
But it does happen. In fact, that's where it starts mostly. That's where it starts. So that's sexual violence. Any sexual act, in as much as the person didn't give you a consent, you violated that person's rights. So that's how I define sexual violence all the time.
Absolutely. So why are you particularly passionate about this public health topic?
To be honest, the passion started when a friend of mine, we went on the normal rural field experience to Akampa and Igeji local government, to be precise, in Cross River State. So went there for community development, and she decided she took it upon herself. She wanted to know how sexually active the teenagers in that community were. So she printed out questionnaires and gave it to them. And to our own amazement, so many of the teenagers are so sexually active with multiple partners. So we now probe further to know why, how, was it that there was no
guidance,
discipline, no parental guidance? And we found that most of them opened up and they said they were deflowered. Therefore, their virginity was taken from them through rape. Most of them, 70%, to be honest, said it was through rape. And at that point in my mind, I was like, why didn't they tell anybody? As in, why? Nobody fought for them. Nobody did anything. Why didn't they speak up? And that was when we realized there's still a stigmatization.
Yes.
Even with the local community, some of them said when they confided in their mom told them, do you want to tarnish the image of this family? Nobody will marry you if you open up. And so many of them, they internalized what happened to them. They went through it alone. So I started probing, with my friend. We started asking questions. And that was when the passion started in me to educate younger girls, because I feel they also lack that mentorship when it comes to, I have to mentor them. If it happens, open up immediately. The longer you wait, the longer you know. So that was how the passion started. Considering the mental health implication it has on them. So many of them were active because, in a way, it changed their sexual, orientation. Because that's also the implication of sexual violence, sexual dysfunction. So in a way, they just feel, all men want sex, according to most of them. So that was how the passion started in me. And I took it upon myself and my friend, with my friend, to educate them. Before we left the community, we made sure we gathered these girls around and we talked to them about sexual education, preventing STI and all that. So we finally had the chance to speak with the parents whose daughter was recently, then was raped. The mother didn't want us to even tell anybody about it, to be honest. She said she doesn't want anybody to know.
You
She
know
just
about
wants
it.
it to be. Yes.
Yeah, that
So
goes
that was
back
how,
to the stigmatization that you're talking about. Yeah.
yes, yes. That was how the passion started in me. Sexual violence is serious. It is serious. And right now, it's on the increase. Every day, every minute, every second, every hour, people are being raped. And not just girls, not just the girl child. People are being raped, people are being molested. So that was how the passion started in me.
I mentioned earlier that in the past few months, there have been series of rape cases in Nigeria. About 3 I heard of. I'm sure there are many more that didn't get the attention that those 3 got. And out of those 3, 2 girls were killed. And that was really something that shook the country. I guess it was a wake-up call of some sort because, like I said, I'm sure there have been cases, that we didn't hear about, lots of cases. So how did we get here to this point where this is 2020? And it sounds crazy, but it's 2020. How did we get here that we haven't even got the chance, or this is still happening right now, that we have the resources and, public health education aspect out of, talking to people about these kind of things. And yet people are still there, like, raping and killing girls. So in your own perspective, how did we get here, and how is the situation in Nigeria in regards to this?
How did we get here? How did we get here? Well, you've mentioned a lot of awareness, are going on right now. Even before now, a lot of awareness. However, I need to say the awareness is good. It's good. At least so many people are aware. So many people know what to do, how to prevent it, and all. But then, for me, I would say we got here because, to be honest, in Nigeria, we don't have. We have a very weak laws and policies related to sexual violence. Let's be honest, how many perpetrators have been prosecuted? How many? They get caught, and before you know, they pay their way out of, justice system, and they come back into the streets. The girls are not safe. Some boys are not safe. So how do we now handle that? So for me, I would say we got here because we have a weak law and policy system regarding related to sexual violence. It's not really taking us, I believe, from my own opinion, it's not really taking us a very serious offense, because by the time you persecute people, and a lot of people see that, okay, this is a problem, I believe it will reduce, if not prevent it completely, it will reduce it to a bare minimum. And also, I'll say we got here because we have a lot of enablers. Enablers in the sense, like I said earlier, we've enabled it for a very long time.
Boys will be
We've
boys,
enabled it for a very, yes, we've enabled it for a very long time. Don't talk, parents hush their kids, don't talk about it, especially if it's somebody related to the victim. They don't even want you, they don't even want you to talk about it to anybody. And that way, when you shut a child up, so many people don't even make attempt to seek justice. They just feel nobody will believe me. My mom doesn't want me to talk about it alone. So we've had a lot of enablers in time past. And it's good now so many parents are coming up, talking, encouraging their kids to talk about it. But we still have people who enable it in a way. And that way they protect the rapists. They blame the victim. And I'll also say in for the fact that we have a weak law and a weak policy related to sexual violence and enablers, I would also say we shouldn't rule out the family history of abuse,
What do you mean?
childhood. Okay, I'll explain. The family history of abuse, physical abuse, emotional abuse, because for me, when I view sexual violence, I see a pattern. Some people were molested, probably by an older person, an auntie, an uncle, and in a way they feel, oh, I can't talk about it. Their feelings are suppressed. They go out to hurt other people just to assert that superiority,
So
you know.
the mental
So
health component comes into it.
yes, exactly.
Yeah.
On mental health issues that were attended to could also be a factor. So I when I talk of sexual violence, I don't like ruling out that aspect also, because so many people were abused, so many people are going through things that they're not aware of and they've not taken care of, and that kind of, so it's like a cycle, it's a pattern. So I think that's how we got here. And we have a lot of enablers, weak policy related to sexual violence, and also we also have to pay attention to the family history.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think I couldn't agree more, because the enabling parts, it just, I think it strike a chord, because you've seen that, you've seen that most of the time, because you will have parents, in most cases, where they will just say, oh, like, don't do that again, this is wrong, that kind of thing. And, and to go back to what you said in terms of the policies, and how the governments are not doing enough. They're not seeing this as an important, or I think I should say it's an important or urgent matter. And it's just very frustrating that it is when a girl is being killed, that's when, they will now come out and start talking like, okay, we need to stop this. Like, where were you before we got here? Like, something needs to be done, and the time is now, because we can't continue like this, and we cannot all just sit back and let these girls being raped and killed as if they're nothing. It's just not acceptable.
It's not. It's not. It's not. And to also consider the fact that right now in Nigeria, when you walk on the streets, so many people, you see it on people's faces. The fear in the hearts of people, it has created a lot of fear, because you don't know who's next. You don't know what will happen next. So it's really a public health. It's really it's a serious issue, and it's really traumatic.
Yeah.
It's really, really traumatic.
Yeah.
It is.
I guess this, so I guess what I'm about to say is like, sort of like, go back to what we just finished talking about. So what then would you say rape culture is?
Rape culture, rape culture. I'll try to make it very easy. Rape culture is a culture where sexual violence or rape is treated as a normal thing, and the victims are blamed for their own assaults. That's the best way I can explain it for people to understand. It's a culture where we all blame the victim for their own assault. We feel, oh, they put themselves in that situation to
Like
get
the way you were
it.
dressed, or you're the one that,
Yeah,
you caused it.
wearing, why were you there? Why were you there? What were you doing? So that's rape culture. And when I talk of rape, when we talk of rape culture, I wouldn't want us to leave men out of it, because
Yes.
today's rape culture, today's rape culture places a lot of burden on men. Um, for instance, so many people don't believe, in fact, they ignore the fact that men are also victims of rape
Yes.
and sexual violence,
Mhm.
and women are the perpetrator of it.
Yeah.
So today's rape culture, I don't. Recently, there is a video online. Although the police now, they are getting serious, and they're on the lookout for the lady who actually molested a little boy, and she posted it on Twitter. A little boy live. So
That is sickening.
it's very serious. Now it's very serious. So they are on the lookout for her. So rape culture is when we normalize it to feel, oh, what was she wearing? Why should she wear? And also rape culture also tends to treat rape as a problem that should be solved through improving the behavior of the potential victim instead of the behavior of the potential rapist.
Yes.
So they always want to fix the behavior of the victim. Next time, don't wear this. Next time, do this.
Yeah.
But we forget the perpetrator of the act. So that's rape culture, and it
That
includes
interesting.
shaming of
Is that not
blaming the.
interesting though, that we try to change it, in terms of what you just said, the behavior of the victim, like, oh, this is how you talk, you don't do this, you don't do
Yeah,
that. Maybe because of what you're doing, that's the reason why the person came onto you. And we forget that, we let the other person off the hook, that committed the act. And like you said, we just normalize everything, like that's the way it's supposed to be, because that guy,
that's what it's
boy
about.
will be boys, and that's just the way it is. So you have to be the one to behave properly, and that's just sort of like interesting. It's like something that we've been hearing, growing up. And again, 2020, we're still
We're still,
there, the
in
same.
fact, they will tell you, if in fact they will tell you, don't you know men are moved by what they see? That's what most people tell you. Men are moved by what they see. Why not tell the man to also control himself?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
they tend to place a lot of unreasonable, responsibility on the victim.
I love the fact that you brought in that some men actually, they are victims of rape as well, and I think it's
Yes,
very important to point to that aspect as well, because we've seen some women history, and even right now, that historically speaking, and even right now, that they actually molest young boys as well. And
yes,
again, we can say that it could have sort of like changed those boys, like the experience in terms of their sexuality, and all the stuff, their behavior towards women. And based on what we talked about earlier, that in the circle continues, so it affects them mentally, physically, and in terms of how they behave around women, because they've internalized that thing for so long, because they didn't talk about it, and it affect them into manhood. And then it can lead to domestic violence, and that's another topic
yes.
on its own. So it's important that to actually bring that up, that some men actually victims also of sexual violence, rape,
Exactly.
from women as well. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yes.
And
So
so many men don't talk about it.
yes, because of the macho. Yes. So many, they won't talk about it because they will feel that, oh, that's just I'm a man. It shouldn't happen. Like, why would a woman rape me? Yeah, it's we just the brain has been trained, that they're men. Men has to be, they have to have certain,
Strong.
yes, be strong. Yeah. So, but I mean, when it comes to that, with these kind of things, I think we have a lot of work to do in terms of like grooming our young men, to let them know that if anything happens of such, it's important for them to let people know and talk about it, so others can benefit from their experience and prevent that from
That's
happening
true.
to others as well. Yeah.
That's true. That's true.
So would you say then
That's
that,
true.
we as communities, we glorify rape culture?
Yes, we do. We do. As a community, we do. We do in a way. We do. Because as a community, we do. I'll say we do a whole lot of time. For example, even up to date, so many young ladies are still afraid to walk into a police station, for example, to file a complaint that, oh, somebody touched me, somebody raped me. Because the first question they get asked, Madam, what were you wearing?
Are you
What were you doing there? What was the time? What was the time? That's the first question you get asked. What was the time? What were you doing there? Don't you know you're a girl? Why did you walk that path alone? Why would you visit a man? So that's the first question you get asked. And most times when you hear things like that, I always ask myself, then how do you not expect the person to seek justice? The first place they could get help, they've been blamed and judged and shamed already. And now taking that from now that's the security. Let's now talk about the family. Some will believe, some won't believe, some will judge you, some won't judge you. Even as friends, there are some friends you confide in, and the victims will tell their friend, oh, this is what happened to me, and they take the news to somebody else. That way they start pointing fingers. And in here in Nigeria, we have a way of tagging people.
Yeah, so the
That girl
confidentiality
that
is not
was
there.
raped.
Mm-hmm.
It's not there.
Yeah.
It's not there because so many times we still don't have that. I believe we still don't have that. Should I say proper orientation, or we still have that mindset, that mentality, that especially as a girl child, you don't say that if you want to get married in the future. They'll say, oh, that girl that was raped, they just tag the person immediately. So yes, we still in Nigeria as a community, we do, we do, we do, we
So,
do,
so
we
why
do.
do we then protect um, the accused and blame the victim? Why?
Ah, I've been thinking about this. In psychology, there was a class we took, and there is this research I did. I find that in a way, we have this urge, this tendency to judge things we don't understand or we may never understand. You don't understand it. Instead of you to, do your findings, we just have a way of just judging it immediately. And I feel by saying that it all boils down to ignorance. The absolute truth is ignorance. Where we believe bad things happen to bad people. So she must have done something bad, to deserve what happened, or she kind of drew that attention to herself, or she set herself up for that tragedy. So we just have that. So I would say it's ignorance and lack of education. And when I say education, I'm not talking about bachelor degree, masters. In Nigeria, let me say Nigeria, let me not say Africa. In Nigeria, let me just restrict it to my own country. In Nigeria, so many people don't have that zeal. Okay, you don't understand something, you want to know more. But some people just, they just lay back. I don't understand it and I don't want to understand it. People don't understand how, for example, how will you say your uncle raped you? How would you say your husband raped you or your wife raped you? So for me, I'll say it's ignorance. It's ignorance, and that just that urge to judge what you don't understand. People don't understand it, and instead of showing empathy, they just,
Yes, that's the word.
you know,
And would you think culture has a role to play in that?
it does a very big role, a very very big role, a very big role. Culture does have a role to play. Um, for example, okay, let me use an Nigeria for example. where we went for community service, and my friend carried out the research. We found out that over there, even as a girl child, you can't even you can't even say, oh, my uncle hugged me. You can't even hug your uncle in the first place. So it's absurd for you to now say your uncle raped you. Over there, we were surprised. You can't just rape. Your uncle came around that, oh, uncle, and you hug your uncle. They see it as, the child is wild. She's now spoiled and all that. So let alone a child coming out and saying, oh, my uncle molested me, my uncle touched me, my uncle. Nobody will believe.
So
Nobody will believe.
they would blame that child that, you must have done something.
Yes, nobody will believe. So yes, culture does have a role to play. Culture does have a role to play. It's a very big role.
So now I'm going to switch gear a little bit. So now I'm talking about like intimate relationship now. So would you say sexual violence occur, or is it safe to say that, in an intimate relationship setting? Because I know we talked about like, it can happen in any setting. So now we're talking about like, people that actually in an intimate relationship. So would you say that, or is it safe to say that, sexual violence do occur?
Yes. Yes, it occurs. In intimate partner relationship, it occurs. It occurs. We've had cases, so many cases of intimate partner sexual violence. We've had so many cases of it. It occurs in as long as the person did not give consent. People don't understand that. They feel, oh, I'm married to this person.
Yeah.
It's very easy for it to happen in an intimate partner relationship. Very, very easy.
And a lot of people won't think about it that way because they're like, oh yeah, it's my husband,
it's my wife, it's my partner, she's my partner, so why can't I touch her anytime I please?
Exactly.
But people fail to understand that in as long as the person has not given you consent, it's rape, it's sexual violence. You violated that person's rights. You violated that person's rights. Whether you're the husband, whether you paid the bride price, you gave 1 million, it doesn't matter. But that person needs to give you consent to touch them in any way that pleases them. So people don't really take that seriously, but it happens in intimate partner relationships.
Yeah, like you said, it's very easy, and it's very easy to happen, and people don't detect it too, just because of the settings where it's taking place.
Pardon?
I said it's very easy for people not to even detect it, that this is sexual violence because of the settings, right? You're like, oh, this is fine. Yeah. So
it's very easy. And walking into the police station, for example, to report, they'll be like, it's your husband now. How can your husband rape you? How can your wife rape you? Or God just go home. It happens a lot. People don't believe it, but it does happen. It does happen.
It sounds crazy, but at the same time, it's just like, how when people that the authority figure that you said, okay, let me go report it, they are even shutting it down. So and we're talking like adults or people in a relationship. So talk us of a young child. I don't know how you expect people to actually come out and express what they've gone through without being judged or not being believed.
Talk about it if you don't believe.
Yeah, it's I think it's still a way to go in regards to that. So then, how do we prevent it, or is it even possible to prevent sexual violence?
It's very possible. In my heart of hearts, I believe it's possible.
How do we go about it?
But we have to be honest here. The solution is as complex as the problem. It is as complex as the problem. And I say so because when it comes to prevention, it takes not just the government, not just the individual, not just the family, the entire community.
Yes.
The entire community. And when I talk about the entire community, I'm talking in the individual level, the community level, relational level, the social policy level. It takes a whole lot, but it can be prevented. in preventing it, we need to stop it from even happening in the first place.
Yeah.
When we talk of prevention, I solely believe in primary prevention. I solely believe in primary prevention. We can stop it from happening in the first place. Like I said earlier on, so many youths, so many teenagers need mentorship. We need to have peer programs where parents and teenagers and children can have, good relationship. We need to have, like I said, good mentorship. We need to have education. Anytime I get to talk about this, I always say that we need to introduce mental health education in our school system. We need it because so many children are going through things they don't even know themselves. So when you have someone talk to them about it, a child can now walk up to the counselor or to whoever is in charge of the program and say, oh, that thing you mentioned about me, mood swings, about having, urges I can't control, sir or ma, I feel that way sometimes. So it's advisable that we introduce mental health education in our school system. And also so many people need life skills in in uh, in gender. When I talk of life skills, I'm talking about training in understanding gender equality and respect. Young boys need to understand that no is a complete sentence. Complete. And no does not mean you are less a man. No does not mean, I get to tell my nephew most of the time, when somebody rejects or when somebody says no, it doesn't mean you're ugly, it doesn't mean you're terrible. It's just at that point they don't want to have anything to do with you. So yes, it can be prevented. It can. We need to stop it from happening in the
Like,
first
some
place.
great, tools that we can use, there. And
Yes,
yeah, we just have to start from scratch, and it takes a community effort in that regards.
it
Yeah.
takes community effort. Yes.
Yeah.
It takes community effort. And also the family need to be involved. The family needs to be involved. And that's why when we talk of sexual violence, I I always advise that we include men. We
Yes.
include men because it still points to them. So we need to include them. It's not a gender war. If we want gender equality, we need to include them. They need to understand what gender equality is. Because I know outside the country, so many people understand what it entails. But here in Nigeria, we still see it as a fight for superiority, you know, and so many people don't understand it. So we need to include men for them to also understand. We need to carry them along. And yeah, it can be prevented. I really believe it can be. Some people say it cannot, but I believe it can be prevented.
Okay. So we talked about, briefly mentioned the mental aspect. So what do you think are the impacts of sexual violence on mental health?
The impact, it has a lot of impact too. But I'll mention a few: post-traumatic stress disorder,
Yeah.
post-traumatic stress disorder, the feeling of hopelessness, dissociation. They feel dissociated. They can't just be they can't be present at that moment with anybody. They just isolate themselves. Anxiety, depression, suicidal thoughts. Most of them tend to self-harm. It also causes panic attacks. That one is common, when you don't feel safe anywhere. You're always on the lookout most times. So panic attack, depression, isolation, post-traumatic stress disorder, and also sexual dysfunction. Like I said earlier,
Yes.
it's
You did
it
mention.
also affects that
So
part too.
what about the physical aspects? What are the impacts on the physical aspects?
The physical aspect, I will talk about dislocated bones. For example, the case of the late Uwa, some people go die extreme. We talk about the soreness, bleeding, vaginal or anal bleeding. We talk about sometimes strangulation. So, uh,
So
Physical injuries and
yes, injuries. You have to,
substance abuse also.
yes.
Yes,
To know
substance
the
abuse
thing.
also.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yes, substance abuse also.
Yeah.
So it's
So what about
also the
the whole
physical.
community? Because I mean, it must have some sort of impact on the whole community as a whole.
Hmm. The major impacts, insecurity. When you don't feel secure, even in your own home, it causes a lot of fear within the community. And also, it affects the community because when people, let's say, for example, in rural areas, here in the city, people still step out and do their thing, they still go about their businesses. But in rural areas, so many people are scared to go to their farms, for example, and how do they feed? So it affects the community in a big way. It affects the community in a big way. We talk about the fear of being outdoors, insecurity. It affects also the economy of the community
Yes, the economy as
because
well.
if people are not, it affects the economy of the community. We cannot step out, and when you're living in fear, you're unproductive. So it affects the economy of the community also.
Yeah. So I mean, I guess the bottom line is that we need people like you in the community, you know, to help sort of like, continue to raise awareness on this issue and other important and challenging public health issues. Because when you have communities or places still around the world that, the authority figures or parents are not believing the victims and they're shutting them down, then this problem, if we're not careful, it's going to go on for a very long time. And this is not what we want. We want an end to it. Like you said, no is a complete sentence. And we need to start training our boys and girls to let them know when, it's time not to cross that boundary. So,
Yes.
and you've told us some ways. I mean, I think, you've pointed out some fantastic ways on how to go about that. And it starts with like educating our young girls and boys, like, and engaging men in the discussion as well to hear their own view or perspective on the issue. So
Yes.
would you like to add anything to that?
I'll also say that, okay, let me just say this first, that you're also doing a good job.
Well, thank you so
It
much.
takes, like you said, it takes a lot of community effort. So, of course, it takes you also, you and I, the bankers. It's
Mhm.
not just those in the health sector, not just those in the health sector, the
Yeah.
bankers, the market women, the market men. So, yes, it takes a community. And I really believe that if measures are put in place,
Mhm.
you know, in all levels, I strongly believe we can fight this, and it's good. I must comment that the government, they are trying now. There are a lot of awareness and protests are going on. I heard in some states now they've actually implemented the law and they're taking it seriously. We hope it continues and it
That's
just
good.
doesn't just stop.
It's a good sign. I mean, we have to start from somewhere.
I'm telling you,
Yeah.
so many states are really taking it seriously. And we just hope, we hope it's not just them arresting and not prosecuting. Because when we see an example, people will be able to come out, open up and talk about it and seek justice. And I also want to advise that when it happens, for all our viewers, when it happens, don't don't withdraw, don't withhold yourself from telling your story. Tell your story, report it immediately. That way, you can get your evidence. The longer you wait, when you go to a court, they will want you to present an evidence. But at that point, you can present evidence. You can do swab test and all that. So don't wait, don't stay long. Even if your parents don't believe you, if your loved ones don't believe you, tell your story. It is your story, and you are the ones who will get justice for it. So tell your story. People shouldn't be afraid to, not people shouldn't be afraid to tell them their stories. Tell your story. And don't worry, people will fight for you. Even if your family members don't fight for you, there's so many people who are interested. People like myself and Dr. Bidmos. Don't worry, people will fight for you, people will
Yeah,
speak for you. So
absolutely.
people should just tell their story. and get justice.
Yeah, yeah, that's great. I think that's a great conclusion. And I'm just gonna add that don't ever feel that it's your fault, because it's not your fault. And like she said, if you feel or you've been harassed or sexually abused in any way, the main thing is to come forward and let people hear it. So there's always one or two people that's gonna be interested in that story, and support, give you the support, to be able to succeed, in getting justice for yourself. Yeah. So this is it for the show, and I want to
Yeah.
thank you again for joining me. And I hope you'll be back, because I will be bringing you back soon, because I know that you have a lot of public health topics that you're passionate about, and that you'll be back again to have a chat with me on some of these
I would love to be back.
challenging public health topics affecting our communities, in different part of the world. Yeah. So thank you again for joining me, and I really, really appreciate you coming on the show today.
Thank you for having me. It's really a great honor to be on your platform.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
That was such an educative and informative session with Hope. I want to thank her again for coming on. On that note, if you have any public health topics or that you want me to shine a light on, or you want to appear on the show, please feel free to DM me. I'm more than happy to take a look into it. On to the next video, please continue to practice all the preventive measures in place, and please stay safe and stay positive. Thank you guys so much. Take care.